All right, we're ready for our next event here today. Welcome everyone to the Comox Valley Recreation Commission meeting for February 10th. We'll begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. Our first item is public input on the financial plan, so I'll turn this over to our finance team.
Thank you through the chair to directors. Good afternoon. So from a public engagement perspective, this is something that happens with our budgets every year. And the engagement has been open since January 21st this go round. And very quickly, we received 2 items of feedback. One was about navigating our site and being able to get to information. And the second piece did relate to recreation services. So it was about pool access being limited compared to other cities of similar size. And it talks about availability and being able to get into programming, swimming programming. And if you want to read the full piece of feedback, that you can get at it from the Engage site. So that's my update for public engagement.
Thanks for sharing that. And we'll move on to reports. So the first report is the 2026 Community Event Support Fund application for the Comox Valley World Cup Community Watch Party. Moved by Hillian, seconded by Grant, and I'll pass it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Trish Morgan is our Assistant Senior Manager of Recreation Services, and Trish will be introducing this report.
Thank you, James. Through the chair to the commission. As a follow-up to the staff report in October about the potential opportunity to host watch parties and community events celebrating the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the province of BC has established the 2026 Community Event Support Fund to support safe and accessible public live match viewing events. So in collaboration with the City of Courtenay, Town of Comox, and Village of Cumberland, we're tentatively proposing a flagship event on Friday, June 12th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Comox Valley Exhibition Grounds and artificial turf fields 1 and 2. Activities would include a public viewing of Team Canada's noon match in Toronto, the grand opening of the new artificial turf field pending completion, and it is on track to complete the first week of June, a soccer jamboree or skills competition, cultural performances, family activities, lots of fun activities like inflatables, live music, food trucks, along with a beer and wine garden. Additional smaller events would be organized throughout the tournament at Marina Park and Lewis Park. And a comprehensive event safety plan has also been developed and is supported by the RCMP and Courtenay Fire Department. The estimated cost of the event is close to $100,000. The grant application, if successful, will contribute 75% or $75,000 from the province. And it does require $25,000 then from the CVRD. Other in-kind support between the partners is also being discussed in terms of supporting with staff, existing equipment, that sort of thing as well. The budget includes costs for additional policing per the RCMP's direction for this large event, an event coordinator, security, audiovisual, and stage rentals, licensing, a band, activities, etc. The grant application was due on Friday, February 6th, and it was submitted. However, if the commission is not in a position to support the application, it can be rescinded. We just didn't want to miss the deadline. 2 options have been presented in the report for your consideration. Option 1 is a recommendation that from staff to approve the submission of the grant application and commit $25,000. If the grant is successful, this will allow the CVRD to leverage a significant provincial funding and deliver regionally supported events. No funds would be spent until the grant is approved, and we would be looking to that in March, and in April they would be transferring funds if we're successful. Option 2 is to decline support for the application and the corresponding budget commitment, in which case the application would be rescinded and the partners would be informed of the decision. If the commission does commit $25,000 for the events and we're unsuccessful in obtaining the grant, then staff will return to the Recreation Commission for direction on whether to organize small scale events that fit within the budget of $25,000, or if that money should just stay in the budget for this year and move forward as surplus in the future year. Thank you. And are there any questions?
Thanks for that report. And we'll pass it over to alternate director Jolly Kerr for a question.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks. I fully support the application, except for one item in the staff report for this week that is a little bit different than the staff report from October 8th. And I note that in this week's staff report, there's a note on the impacts related to public health and safety, and there's also a safety plan attached. However, in this report, and you highlighted it in your opening remarks, there's a beer garden and wine garden. And I guess my first question related to that is it practice of the CVRD to host events and be responsible for the sale of alcohol?
Through the chair to the director, I don't think the CBRD has hosted any events of this nature before. So at the direction of the commission, that could be taken out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a few event watching parties over the years, whether it be FIFA or other sports. And I think when we introduce alcohol, it just changes the flavor. I was really excited with the report and the October 8th report being a family focused event with cultural activities and family activities. And so I do have some hesitations around us being responsible for the sale of alcohol and managing people who are consuming alcohol. And so, yeah, I guess if others have any thoughts on that, but I just, I'm really excited about the idea of having a lot of kids, and it's nice to see that the soccer club is involved and they plan to participate actively in the family activities. And my preference would be for us to not sell alcohol at that event. If people want to go and use alcohol, they can go privately and do that. But just my thoughts, but I'll cede the floor. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that. And I had a similar question when I was reviewing the report. My understanding is that we would be partnering with an agency or organization that would hold the license and would coordinate that. And it could be a fundraising opportunity for that organization. So, but certainly the commission can give us direction on focusing more on the other events noted and not on the beer and wine garden. But my understanding it was through partnership with a third-party hosting organization.
Yes, and yeah, I don't think I made that clear. Like, we wouldn't actually be holding the license. It would be another organization, or it would be a company holding a license, like one of the breweries or that sort of thing. But again, at the direction of the commission, we can certainly take that out. We're really at the high level planning stage at this point.
I'm just going to chime in with a follow-up. If we don't make a decision on that particular detail today, is there an opportunity to maybe come back and have a separate discussion about that?
Absolutely.
Great. And I'll pass it to Director Grieve next.
Thanks very much. Yes, and I've been involved in hosting musical events since I was in grade 7, but we didn't have beer gardens then. I think that the big thing about the beer garden is an issue. I again, like you say, would have to be a third party taking on that responsibility. Like you say, whether it's one of their local breweries themselves, and they're donating some money to YANA or the Child Development Association, whatever, then I would support it. But the one thing you have to remember about beer gardens is that it really doesn't get crazy till the lights go on, till the sun goes down. So if it's an afternoon thing, generally speaking, and I mean, generally speaking, people don't drink like they used to anyways, but my experience has always been if somebody stands on a chair and goes Yahoo and throws it, pulls their shirt off or something, that's when the moon's shining, there's a different time of day. So what time of day was this scheduled to be? Or was it an afternoon event?
Through the chair to Director Grieve, we're looking at approximately 9 to 5, but it may be later. We're still like in that very early planning stage. The match is at 12 o'clock. Whether or not we do some other activities after that, we're not exactly sure.
Because I would offer that your risk factor is greatly diminished if it's a daytime activity. It's a different crowd, a different vibe, shall we say. So yeah, and obviously it would be an opportunity for the Rotary or some other service club. And I would think that if they're giving some of the proceeds to one of the more worthy of the many charitable organizations in the valley that would support it. So yeah, the one thing I would caution though, this came up at the leaders' lunch, and Will was there, and the big issue with Scott Mercer was to make sure that we wouldn't be relying on his members for these sort of things, that we man up or person up and get a hefty contingent of the security companies out and about, and that would also make it much better. And of course, I think his big fear was things he didn't know about. So that, like impromptu pop-up events, which are much more difficult to plan for. So as long as he's kept abreast, which he would be, of course, all emergency services would be notified on this. So very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Grieve and Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just show support for Director Jolicoeur's suggestion to make it a non-alcoholic event. I think FIFA soccer watching, there's going to be plenty of places and pubs where people can go and be merry with alcohol. But I think for something, I really like the way you describe like a more family oriented event, and I think it would create a nicer atmosphere than any alcohol there. So I'm just want to show support.
Thanks for that. And Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I'm easy either way. I would just point out that one of the biggest family-friendly events that takes place every year in the Comox Valley is our Courtney July 1st celebrations, and it does in fact have a beer garden. And it's never been a problem as far as I've seen. Thanks.
Thanks. And Director Warren.
Great, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I support the application for sure. And I also support the idea of alcohol-free, because we do get questions quite often about, have people wanting to have more events that I hear Director Hillian's comment that we don't have a problem on Canada Day, but I think when there's an opportunity to make the choice, I think having a more dry event, considering that a study came out at the end of January, alcohol causes more harm in Canada than any other drug. It was a pretty extensive study. And I think it supports also the work of the substance use strategy and some of the other community organizations. And for that reason, I'd be supportive of that and definitely supportive of the event. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing that. And Director Kerr.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, also just given that, excuse me, the timing of the event, I think it really just, if it's a 12 o'clock game and you're having mostly daytime activities, I think a beer garden actually might look a little strange with that type of event. So I think if it was like a 7 p.m. game and you were doing the event like 4 to 10, and then that would kind of fit with that, atmosphere. But yeah, if there's, soccer club themed events and games out in the field and a really family-focused event, I think an alcohol-free event would make a lot of sense as well. So I support that. Thanks, Alternate Director Jolicoeur, for bringing that up.
Yeah, thanks everyone for chiming in and sharing thoughts around that. I think it's a good discussion, and staff can take that away and come back with some greater detail at a later date. So with that, we'll dispense with receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Morin, seconded by Hillian. Any discussion on the recommendation? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving along to our financial plan. Now I'll pass this over to staff.
Thanks very much. And Lucy Wachark again will be introducing the overall process, and then we'll move into the Recreation Core Service from Doug DeMarzo, and then Doug will introduce the individual service budgets after that. So Lucy.
Thank you. Through CAO to the chair and directors, staff are quite pleased to be here today to bring you your proposed service budgets. Just a couple of quick reminders before we begin. This is the third year that we have used a changed process for budgets, and I think most directors are quite familiar with how the overall CVRD process works and how we conduct our budget meetings. The overall budget was presented to the CVRD board on January 27th. And today is all about our committees and our commissions and dealing with the services under their authority. So for the Rec Commission, as our CAO has mentioned, our GM of Community Service will provide that overview, and then we'll get right into your individual services. If any of the directors are wishing further information, we can get that to you as soon as we can. And I just wanted to note, if we are unable to get through all of the services in the allotted time, we can come back and deal with them on February 24th. Recommended budget circles back to the CVRD board on March 17th. And I just wanted to just remind about asset management. January 27th, the CVRD board received their final summary for the asset management strategy and provided direction to staff. We're in the process of refining our costing, and that'll translate into some changes to the asset management costs that you're going to see in the proposed budget today. And that'll all come back with the recommended budget to the board. Okay. And with that, if there's no other questions, we can proceed with your core service summary overview. That's okay? Okay.
Good afternoon, and through the chair, just start by acknowledging that recreation means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Public recreation matters because it gives people space to be human, to move, rest, connect, and belong, without needing lots of money, status, or permission. We advance recreation through these services on this slide. Primarily the aquatic center, sports center, curling centers, and exhibition grounds. Some of the key service outcomes by the Rec Commission include looking at our asset management. There's a slide later on about the importance of that. Engaging with our volunteers, who in turn engage with the community, and collaborating with our landowner partners, including NIC and the school district. And of course, the greenhouse gas initiatives we've been working on through SEEP. Partnerships with Comox First Nations and Indigenous people remain a priority, and we seek them where possible. As you can see here, you're continuing to advance your recreation plan, strategic plan. It's been wonderful. So we have some playing fields underway. We're looking forward to an allocation framework to help serve our community better. And there's discussion in the long term of amenity improvements on fields. As alluded to earlier, our amenities are old. So our facilities are approaching 50 years old. And we're looking at the asset management plan led corporately to move from our level 2 or 1 up to level 3 to help us work through workflow procedures, help us on maintaining our equipment to continue to last that or perhaps longer than the life cycles, and looking to be supported by the board in these positions. Corporate and energy emissions plans. This has been a focus for us. We've continued to advance these plans, and they remain a top priority for rec services. Engineering work was completed last year, and we further continue to complete more work this year. Obviously, working in old buildings, costs are maybe different than we originally anticipated, but the goal remains the same. With that, we feel we're trending in the right direction, continue to focus on our existing facilities to help bring down the corporate emissions plans. Here's one of the most challenging slides probably of today. External challenges are coming. They have come in years past. Many distractions and competition for funding remain. We started down this path with the Recreation Strategic Plan. It's important that we keep the momentum going. One of the biggest challenges we see in 2026 will be the Courtney Outdoor Pool, with a pending decision that could further delay and complicate our progress on both your arena and pool additions envisioned in this plan. At the same time, plan security for future expansion has emerged as a key issue, alongside the increasing number of groups seeking to build their own facilities due to the lack of available space in the community. We've seen this all this year at the Recreation Commission table, and these are all big challenges we have. With regards to funding, competitions comes from a few places. Recently, the board has put a main focus on one of the biggest issues facing our community, which is, of course, housing dollars. But it still competes with the overall tax space here to engage you in your recreation strategic plan. So advancing recreation for the betterment of the community will eventually require a decision on borrowing around major infrastructure, life cycle, and even to keep our assets going. Lastly, it's maybe important that we need to focus on strategic land acquisition through a CVRD corporate lens moving forward. And currently we see continued growth at 19 Wing. We see lots of demands for public use of land, whether it's recreation or others. Keeping an eye to partnerships within the CVRD and adjacent municipalities will help continue one of these challenges moving forward. There's no doubt that the school systems are growing, and we do have our major recreation facilities on school land, which we are starting to take up a lot of, as we saw in the arena discussions. But one thing we've always been known about to be is adapting. Our community has been adapting their recreation habits to participate and fill spaces that they may not have seen in their original radar growing up. However, we do see many of our clubs now bursting at the seams and asking for more facilities. We too have been looking to expand facilities in the short term as well, but we continue to adapt for transparency and fairness. So I'm going to be a little bit frank here. Looking ahead to the Rec Commission, we know there's nothing that's going to be built in the next year or two. We may see lottery systems for high demand swimming lessons coming to this board. We may see reduced adult recreation services in our facilities. We still have the pending amenity cost charges to help growth pay for growth models. And you may see policies change to a locals first approach. All these approaches have unintended consequences, but they also have benefits to this community we serve. It will be interesting to see how we adapt over the next few years to keep recreation accessible and affordable. And here you have expenses slide. We're seeing large expenses here continue to rise, and that's based on the arena and asset management for your debt charges. And again, you see a lot of the money is through tax requisition to run our facilities. And it goes out to transfers to reserves. Here you have your revenue, which you see your sales of services, a proportionate amount. And as mentioned earlier, we will look to what that ratio is in the coming year, see if we can improve that. At the end of the day, we're trying to keep our services affordable to the community. So moving ahead, we have LEAP programs at our facilities. We support nonprofits who do wonderful work, such as the Aspire and Rec Grant 600 as a Cumberland Trail system. We manage many sports. We support fields which have all sorts of activities, from dog walking, random frisbee throwing, to developing the next high level possible Olympic players. In the end, public recreation is one of the most tangible ways people experience shared public investment. When spaces are well cared for and welcoming, they signal that everyone matters and deserves a quality of life, not just those who can pay for it. Hence, I encourage us to continue in the shared regional approach for our major facilities as we move into our 51st year of serving our community as we move forward. I know this is a little bit of a down tone I'm sending here, but it's a good reality of what's happened or going to be happening in the future. But I should also acknowledge that the Rec Commission here has made great strides in advancing the Rec Commission strategic plan, and continuing to build on that plan will be of utmost importance. Although I do see a number of current threats around land management and competing interests that are going to challenge us. And Trish will have more information on that as the continuing presentations unfold. So with that, perhaps sobering, or depending on how you take it, great thoughts onwards. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thanks for that presentation to start us off here today. I do see a light on. Over to you, Director Arbor. Oh, Director Hillian.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation, Doug. You mentioned strategic land purchases, and I wondered if there was any further initiatives that are coming forward in that regard that staff are aware of. I realize we can't talk about the details in an open meeting, but in general terms.
I think at this stage, we're doing a cursory review of what those demands are. We've met with a lot of groups that are seeking their own facilities. When they deliver those facilities, they need to recover their costs. And that's kind of what I alluded to in the higher cost of recreation if it ends up being in a private model or otherwise. So I think if we're able to secure land as a regional district or municipality or through a major zoning in the future, I think just getting that land will help us plan not only for recreation, but for other community needs, whatever they be, whether it's housing, health, or other partnerships we can develop depending on the size of land. So it's important that we start to focus on that in my mind. And maybe I'm speaking more from a corporate lens, but it's also important for recreation to push behind that idea, philosophy.
And Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I fall under the category of threats to the Rec Commission and the strategic plan. I'll repeat what I said at ESC yesterday because a similar presentation was given. And by now, I think my signal, if it wasn't clear, is I think Area A has checked out of the strategic plan, the current strategic plan. And I've spent the year kind of thinking, I didn't go to service review or anything like that because I want to be conscientious of the work that's being done by this table, realizing I'm the only truly unhappy participant. And partly it's driven by what I hear in my area where people don't have as much access. They have a ton of recreational needs in my area and they want to invest in facilities down in the south, including our community halls, community centers, fields. There's so much opportunity. And I guess what really scares me is the 5-year financial plan where, you know, for Area A, we currently contribute 700,000. It would go to 1.3 million. This is like serious dollars in my rural area. This is one of our largest tax item. And I'm not, as you've heard, I've not been convinced that the plan to centralize everything and add a third sheet of ice, swimming pool, huge ticket items at a time where the world kind of screaming hold on a lot of different projects. I don't know how to proceed because I've never received much feedback from the commission, and I haven't asked formally for it either, I must admit, but I haven't heard anyone acknowledge the inequity issue. And I've started a report over Christmas looking at the whole AVICC region of how different regional districts are structured. And we stand out. It's very rare that the rural areas contribute 100%, just like municipalities. In fact, it's quite the opposite in many regional districts. So anyways, I thought I'd say that because if people have suggestions to me on how to move forward, I think I will kick this to next term, but if there's a referendum or something like that, maybe that would be the opportunity to see where the policy is at in Area A, and that could be a simpler way to just wait for that. And if my residents didn't want to stay part of it, then we would know the next steps. So, and in regards to pressure, yeah, no, I don't disagree with Doug. There's a lot of pressure everywhere on recreation and access services. It's just that the answers on how to fill those needs is different in my case.
Yeah, I'll just respond to that briefly. I mean, it is a bigger question than the individual reports that we're looking at today, but I think part of the differential is that a big part of this table is made up of people that are representing municipalities that also have huge other costs for recreation that is completely open to the surrounding areas. And I know that our Lewis Center does provide a lot of services for your residents in Area A at no cost to them other than user fees, which are highly subsidized. So I do understand that frustration around the centralization of services, but I think that is the very nature of the services that we've intentionally put in at a regional level as those things that need regional support and need centralization, because the other ones are being delivered in municipalities and theoretically in areas as well, or in the communities that you serve. You see it on Hornby Island and on Denman. So I think there is just a maybe a difference of perspective that's difficult to kind of tackle. I don't know, like that, like nothing is ever truly fair, I guess, with this stuff. And I'll allow you to respond, but I just thought it needed some type of response. So
Yeah,
thanks.
that's helpful. And I guess a couple of small things we could do, and I think Doug talked about it in the past. We've never done a usage study, so we actually fly blind on a lot of data. Cowichan just had a referendum at the last election, and they've completely rejigged the Cowichan Regional District, how they allocate. And it's based on every 5 years they do a usage study, and based on usage, each of their 9 facilities charge back for the next 5 years to based on the usage. And that's actually, they call their report Fair Play, Fair Pay. And I thought that was very good. We know in Port Alberni, the areas pay zero and that they're unable to move forward. I'm not saying I should pay zero. I'm just not sure I should pay 100% the cost when the usage is much lower per capita. Across CATET, the ESC for the big Powell River Center that we've all been at, they send a check for 200 grand between the 4 areas each year. And it's at their discretion. So I'm just looking elsewhere, and I think you're right. I would call some of those models unfair, but for me to have such a huge jump in the 5-year financial plan with the addition of new facilities, it's a tough pill to swallow for the areas. And I am increasing the budgets for recreation in my area. Like, I'm conscious that the halls, everything else, we've created services and we're trying to grow it, not to the level of Lewis Center, but I'd like to get there. It's hard when you have all your money going into a center that a lot of people say, well, we're an older population, we actually don't use those services that much, right? And so maybe a bottom thing could be a usage study that we could look at in the future. I realize this is kind of outside of budget, but I think because of the framing that Doug provided today, I just thought it'd be a good time to take the pulse, because in the end, I'll probably vote against the overall financial plan. I don't have a problem with the coming year, but when I look at the increases, yeah, this is a serious problem for area. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Okay, moving on. Our first report is for Service 600, which is the recreation grants. And I'll pass this back to staff.
Thanks. And Trish Morgan will be introducing this budget for Service 600. Trish, over to you.
Thank you. So for Service 600, let's see if we can coordinate the clicking of the mouse and the other one at the same time, like yesterday. So Service 600 recreation grants. As the Commission is aware, the purpose of the service is to provide grants to public organizations and nonprofits to support recreation programs and services in the Comox Valley, as well as contributions to the operation and maintenance of the Courtney Outdoor Pool. This year, there are no changes proposed to the service. Some of the accomplishments over the last year include free swimming being offered at the outdoor pool, and in Comox and Cumberland, the municipalities offered a number of low or no cost programs for children, youth, and seniors through the recreation grants that they were provided. We also saw on the community side, the 100th anniversary of the Comox Valley exhibition, upgrades to Joe King Park on Hornby Island, and trail maintenance continued throughout the network that is supported by the United Writers of Cumberland. Some of the trends chilling across all of the services. There is increased request for funding support. We talked about this yesterday at ESC for recreation programming and events within our community. And the demand for some recreation programs and services are exceeding the capacity of the organizations to deliver them due to the lack of facilities and or coaches. And Doug talked about that there are some of the nonprofits, sports groups that are starting to look to see if they can construct their own facilities, because they are growing so much that they have outgrown the facilities that currently exist. On the human resources side, nothing has changed from 2025 to 26. On the expenses side for the service, the total expenses have decreased by approximately 373,000. Last year, the city of Courtney requested 250,000 for planning and design of for the renovation or construction of the new outdoor pool, as well as $100,000 for maintenance of the existing pool. The feasibility study on the options was just completed, so the funds were not expended in 2025, and the city would like to carry those funds forward to 2026. They are also in the process of invoicing us for the maintenance that was completed in 2025. So 350,000 is what they would like to carry forward for next year. We look on the next slide, the transfers to other governments. We've got the city of Courtney, again, with the typical requests as previous years, the outdoor pool operations, outdoor pool capital needs, adapted needs program, and the skate park. The town of Comox this year is requesting an increase of $50,000 for the pump track, the modular pump track. I believe the total project is around 215,000. So they're looking for a contribution to support that project. And the Village of Cumberland is asking for their regular grant of 5,000 a year. Moving on to the next slide, application-based grants. We talked about this in January. So this is the list that was approved in January, with the exception of, you'll see on the slide, DERA and HERA, and those are two amounts that are embedded into agreements that we have with them. Otherwise, the total change is an addition of $4,000 for application-based grants. On the revenue side, there's no prior surplus that will be carried forward, and the requisition is down by approximately 175,000. And then in terms of the taxation, the only thing I'd like to point out there is taxation is being reduced by about 2.4 cents, from 2.4 to 1.8. On the operating budget for 2027 to 2030, the projections. At this time, we're not seeing any major increases. However, if there is a decision to move forward to support the construction of a new outdoor pool, that will significantly change what these projections look like. And we would likely have to come back with something at a later date to talk about what that looks like and how that may impact the tax rates. I know the city of Courtney is planning, their staff is planning to come back probably in March or April to have a discussion with the Rec Commission about what that might look like. And maybe at that time or after that, we can bring forward some cursory numbers. The future expenditure reserve for 600 is at 166 at the end of this year, if everything goes as proposed, and we'll be up to about 320,000 by 2030. Just skip over to the last one. So given the report on FIFA, the recommendation is that the proposed 2026 to 2030 financial plan for Service 600 be amended to increase the grant to organizations by 4,000, and that was for the application-based grants, and an additional 25,000 to support the community activation events related to the FIFA World Cup, and that the amendments be reflected in the board's direction for the 2026 financial plan. Are there any questions on that?
Thanks for the presentation. I'm just looking at the agenda, and it doesn't list the additional 25,000. Did I misunderstand? Was it supposed to have two separate? It was, through the chair. Yes, it was a late addition, that 25,000. So it's not included in that. But since the decision was made just to support it, yeah, it'll just come in the recommended budget at the next meeting. Okay, just
so it
wanted
just
to make
needs to
sure.
be reflected in the resolution.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay, thanks. Is there any questions on the presentation or the recommendation? We are not on receipt because we didn't do it. So if someone wants to move the recommendation. No, the recommendation, please. Moved by Grant. Seconded by Morin. Yes, as presented on the agenda, I'll just read it out that the proposed 2026 financial plan for Service 600 grant be amended to increase grant organization by 4,000 and be approved. That's the motion that we're on. No questions or comments on that?
Sorry, just to clarify, and I understand the previous decision on the FIFA watch party, the $25,000 would also be included in here, so we would, I believe, correct, Trish?
Add, I think, I'm looking to Lucy, but I think it would be increase the grant to organizations by $4,000 plus an additional 25,000 for the community events related to the FIFA World Cup.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, it was captured in that earlier. Yeah,
That's true, yeah.
I think we're clear. Okay, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And on to Service 601, Comox Valley Track and Fields.
Just wait for Lisa to, just looking for it. There it is. All right, Service 601, Comox Valley Track and Field Service. So this provides funding for the construction and maintenance of the 2 artificial turf fields and the capital replacement of the 400-meter track at Banyay, as well as contribution for maintenance at Banyay and the Highland grass fields. One major change to the service was that the Village of Cumberland joined the service effective January 1st, 2026. Looking at the strategic priorities for the service, the first is the construction of the artificial turf field, which at this time is on track for opening hopefully early in June. Hopefully it will align with also our FIFA event, but it is partly dependent upon weather. Right now, the RFP for the turf and the shock pad are out, and we should be getting all of our bids in fairly soon here. The second is the field allocation policy, central booking system, and field fee policy. Many members of the commission attended the elected officials forum in January, and were updated on that. There we go, that's the right slide. And then the third is the field improvements and amenities program. As we heard on January 29th, many sport groups have noted throughout the field allocation policy development process that there's a need for investment into existing fields in order to make the inventory of fields more attractive and usable for groups. RC Strategies presented at that meeting that we have enough fields for our population. However, the challenge is that the fields need improvement or they need amenities in order to support the demand for the use. As staff, we plan to bring forward a report in the near future in the next couple of months to the commission to consider principles to establish a program to support improvements and amenities in both the urban and the rural areas of the Comox Valley. I think we'll skip over this slide because I think we've already talked about those, and I think Doug mentioned a few of those in his opening statements. Again, trends, challenges, opportunities. The demand for facilities outpaces the number of available and suitable facilities that we have and spaces. They're there, but they need some investment to make them more attractive and more usable. One of the opportunities that we heard through the field allocation process is that groups are willing to pay or pay more if they receive value for service. So improved facilities, being surfaces, lights, washrooms, those sorts of things. And that they're not opposed to paying fees for those things. What the threshold is, we're still working on that. Some of the work plan items for 2026, obviously, is completing Artificial Turf Field 2 in beginning of June. I think when we wrote this slide, we were optimistic it would be before that, but it's looking like June. Supporting the City of Courtenay in the regional field allocation policy development and fees framework process, development of the field improvements, and then working towards an agreement with Comox Valley Schools on Artificial Turf Field 2. Another couple of notes about the regional field amenities and field improvement program. We're looking forward to bringing forward a report likely in March for this with some ideas on the principles for the commission to consider to develop a program. Some of the criteria or principles that we might include that I gathered from the really great discussion on January 29th is increasing the bookable inventory in the urban areas to address supply and demand in this area, increasing the playability of fields in rural areas to possibly support more organized or spontaneous use. High use fields establishing or demonstrating maintenance programs, and bookable fields being having a fee associated with them if it's not already in place. So those are some things that we'll be bringing forward for further discussion soon to the commission. UN resources remains unchanged from 2025. No anticipated changes there. On the expense side, there are some increases to account for the first 6 months of maintenance for the new artificial turf field, including operation of the washroom. Additionally, debt payments for the construction of the new field will start in 2026 at $120,000 a year. However, the transfer to reserves is being reduced significantly. As such, staff would like to know if the commission would like to start a new reserve for field improvements and amenities in 2026, or if you'd like to defer that and start that in 2027 once we have a policy around that. And I think that's, sorry, I had some other notes and they're gone. Moving on to revenue. On the revenue side, we're seeing a reduction of taxation of $256,000 this year. And that is largely, again, as we were maxing out in previous years in order to have enough money to contribute to the construction of the new field. Tax rates are anticipated to go down from about 3.51 cents to about 2.55 per thousand this year. And again, that's as a result of the reduction in taxation. And then the projection for the operating budget from 2027 to 2030. Taxation is looking relatively stable over the next 5 years. And we're just seeing regular inflation from year to year. Again, we're still working on that agreement with the school district in terms of the maintenance of the new field. So these are estimates that we've included here, and then we'll have more refined numbers for a 2027 year budget. In terms of capital planning and asset management, the turf field and the new turf field and track are owned and maintained by Comox Valley Schools. We have a great partnership with them, but they are their assets. Currently, the CVRD and school district contribute equally to the maintenance and replacement of the assets, but that's our current agreement at this time. To that end, we are looking ahead to 2029. That's when the first artificial turf field will need to be have some life cycle replacement on it. It's done very well. Typically, you get 10 years out of it, and we'll be looking at 15 years, which is excellent. And again, kudos to the school district who have maintained it so well, and the user groups who have been very mindful of their use and the wear and tear on it. So this renewal will be replacement of the shock pad, the turf, and the infill. We would like to align the infill that's going to be on the new turf field with the same type that will be on the existing. And from what we understand is that on the existing, we have recycled crumb rubber, and we don't want to have recycled crumb rubber. It can be crumb rubber, but it needs to be virgin rubber. Because of the impact to Coho, and given that they're so close to Towie Creek and the Coho Run. So we will be looking to replace that in that year. And we've talked to Solom River Restoration, and that is something that they're looking for us to do. Otherwise, they're very much in support of the two turf fields. Looking at our reserves, we're at ending balance in 2025 of $1,085,271. And then going ahead to future years, we'll see that growing as we move forward up to 2.2 in 2030. So options and recommendations. So option one is that the proposed 2026 to 2030 financial plans for Service 601, Comox Valley Track and Fields, be amended to include an annual $200,000 reserve contribution funded with taxation for the purpose of establishing a region-wide field improvements and amenities fund, and that the amended proposed budget be approved. Alternatively, that the proposed 2026 to 2030 financial plan for Service 601 Comox Valley Track and Fields be approved. And that's all we have on this one. So are there questions, discussion?
Thanks for getting us through the next service area. We'll pass it to Director Arbor for the first question.
Yeah, thanks. Just well explained. I'm just wondering there's just one ticket maybe I didn't find in the report or in your verbal report, which is what happened to our 2021 contribution to the soccer club to build a change room and washroom facility. I think we had given them a couple $100,000. So then we're now 5 years later. I'm just wondering if the money has been returned or if there are plans afoot to actually eventually move forward with that.
Through the chair to Director Arbor, I believe, and Kelly can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're simply still holding that in reserve for them, and that money actually hasn't been released to them. They're having to, I know they want to move forward with it, but if the arena moves forward at the sports center, there might have to be adjustments to the placing of that. There's still room to put it. It just, there would be parking on the location that they've identified now. So the school district and us have talked to them about that, and they're aware of that. So they're kind of just in a bit of a holding pattern to know whether or not they can put it where they had originally cited it, or if they need to move it back a little bit. But there is room for it to go forward. They just are waiting.
It continues to be, maybe it's good that it got delayed to this point because it gives us more options for our other project. I don't see any lights on. Yeah, Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering if maybe we should go with option 2 to give a year to see how things sort themselves out and give people a slight taxation break in the process.
So do you want to move option 2? You can put it on the floor. And Director Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So if we were to delay the reserve for the replacement or the maintenance of the existing turf, what would be the tax implications year over year up until that year that we need to replace it, rather than starting to put away in the reserve this year? Do we have that? Are we able to?
Just to clarify, this reserve on the option 1 is a new reserve for additional amenities outside of our existing
Okay.
facilities. And I know you missed the last elected officials forum, but it was part of that discussion, and that in this field allocation policy, there's recognition that there's additional amenities that are needed outside of what our existing services, and that's what option 1 is referring to, is beginning that process of putting money aside for those field improvements.
So it's not for the replacement of the turf field. Okay.
Yes, yeah. And Director Kerr.
Thanks. Speaking of the turf field replacement, what happens if we get to 2028/9 and the field actually looks okay? Like, do you think it absolutely needs to be replaced then, or if it's still looking okay, would that be bumped back a year or two?
Through the chair to Director Kerr, I think that would be a discussion with the school district, but I think everyone involved would, be okay with that. Like, we never want to replace assets before they're due. And if it's in really good condition, especially with something like this, where it's not a mechanical piece of equipment, that might be an option. So.
Thanks, Director Arbor.
Yeah, just speaking in favor of option 2, and I realize like Dr. Jolicoeur, I was not at the EOF, I was out of region and my alternate was not available, but I think that discussion around putting money outside, I don't know if it may be best wrapped around into a more comprehensive review of where next term, where we're heading with the regional fields, because in a way I feel it's a little bit of trying to show some dollars for outside the region, but they're not a lot of dollars. So they won't be compared to what we would put in. So I think that that concept should be brought inside a larger framework, perhaps, of if the next board decides to explore that, of how we're going to move forward at the region. And I think even your comments about Lewis Center, like maybe that could be brought. That's what they did in the Cowichan Valley with the usage study. They actually ended up bringing all the facilities, and they regionalized all the facilities. And yeah, so maybe that's, but for now, I think I agree with Dr. Terlian to just hold off on that, because yeah, it's a break. And it's also, for me, it's not clear that that's an immediate need compared to the bigger considerations.
And just for further clarity, this is not necessarily intended for improvements outside of municipal boundaries. It's all of that, the points that were shown on that slide earlier in the presentation. So not necessarily in the rural areas, but also potentially they're included. So that would be to be determined as that fund grows. Is that correct?
Yeah, and if I can, the origin of this is through your strategic planning process, and so it is something that we've wanted to report on for some time. If the reserve contribution is not made in 2026, that's fine. It just means there's less money available when the time comes that improvements could be made. What Trish mentioned earlier was bringing a report to commission in the next several months, I believe, to look at some of the criteria that such a program could consider. And I would look to still continue to progress with that and come to commission to have that conversation. But it may be that the commission wants to have a more broad discussion at a later point in time too. But I think we will continue to bring that criteria discussion forward. It's a worthy discussion, and it does come through your strategic planning process.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks for that context. Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. Just for further clarification, I mean, I would really prefer that we go with option one, because, you know, I see the need on a regular basis, and I think it always makes sense to put money aside for these types of investments. But the reason I moved the other one is because it does seem that there's a bigger conversation that needs to take place right now around the future of recreation in general and how we're going to manage it. And I think that if we have all sorts of private groups who are talking about potentially funding their own facilities, it's worthwhile having a conversation about how exactly they see that happening, and how we should respond, either to work in partnership with them or in some sort of a different way. I mean, I don't know whether these groups think they have corporate support or think that they can fundraise, but you know, the purchase of land and the building of the facilities that they're talking about is no small endeavor. So it seems to me that a larger conversation is worthwhile, and that maybe we just pause with this for a year to allow that to happen.
Director Grieve.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I have to concur with that. It is a shame that we didn't recognize this 4 years ago. Might have headed a lot of stuff off at the pass. But I do applaud staff for actually thinking outside the box a little bit when it comes to the other recreational facilities that lie outside our actual existing ones. So you say, obviously it's not just in the rural areas, but the rural areas come to mind in a big way, because we do have our community halls and we do have the school fields as well. And I think that the future does lie in developing those, or at least working in partnership with them, because you know, not everybody can jump in a car and drive for 20 minutes to play a soccer game.
Yeah, and just to circle back on that, it was, these were priorities that were identified from our field study. This is what came back when our consultant analyzed what our assets are and what future needs we have. And a big thing that came back with that was, you know, access to washrooms, making existing fields more bookable and useful if there's somewhere for people to be able to use washrooms. So that would be an example of something that would be funded by this reserve. related to that, but not exactly on that specific option. I note that in the budget breakdown, the revenues associated with this service are the same going through the financial plan. I think that's about $4,500. We don't, as we learned at our elected officials forum, we don't charge booking fees for youth. And I think that represents probably a really high percentage of the usage. And I'm just wondering, I assume that this will change as we move forward, assuming that we do move forward with our regional booking approach and field allocation. And I'm just wondering if we have a sense of whether or not, I mean, because even if that other revenue went up by 4 times, it's really just a tiny percentage of what we need to run the service. And I'm wondering if staff have any insight into whether or not that would really change the overall look of what this slide looks like once that new policy is in place.
In response to you, it's hard to know at this time. I think the thing that we have to recognize too is that the 2 turf fields and the track are owned by the school district too. So right now we do have some sharing of that revenue and the costs. So it's a little bit different discussion than if we owned our own fields. So right now it's hard to say what that might look like. And they have traditionally not charged for field use, right? Except for some, a little bit of adult use. So there's going to have to be a lot of discussion at their board table as well.
Okay, so yeah, too many unknowns right now to answer. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and then I guess I'll just share my thoughts on these options. I would actually prefer that we go with option 1 and start putting some money aside for these improvements. I don't. I certainly understand the rationale of waiting until this moves one step ahead, but I mean, we've had that field study on our plates for well over 4 years, and we know that that there is a lot of potential for better usage with some minor improvements, and this seems like the most rational way to me to proceed and ensure that we see some of those improvements made. So I'm actually comfortable with option 1, but I hear where the board's at, but I wanted to share my perspective on that. And then my question around that was, if we proceeded with option 1, would this service still see a reduction year over year based on 2025? Is that still a reduction to taxation?
I just need to flip back. So right now we're looking at a reduction of 256,000 in taxations. So if 200,000 was put into reserve, I believe it would just be 56,000. I don't think there's anything else hidden in there. Kelly can't see me. She's too far down.
There are no other items besides the 200,000.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. Okay, seeing no other lights on, we'll vote on the motion, which is to proceed as presented with no reserve established for the field amenities. And opposed? I believe that is defeated. I'll just call the vote again. All those in favor? That's correct. Yeah, option 2 is on the table. Yeah, sure. I don't have a pen though. Thanks. Okay, so again, we're voting on option 2, that the proposed 2026 financial plans for the Service 601 track and fields be approved. That's no $200,000 reserved. All those in favor, or no, we'll go through. Sorry, Arbor, yes. Saw your hand up. Nickel, yes. Grant, yes, and Director Hillian, are you in favor? And okay. Those are all in favor. And then Grave, are you opposed, in favor? Okay, so you're opposed. Kerr? Cole Hamilton? Oh, no, sorry. Why, you're on my list. You're on my list. It must be I'm just reading names here. Thank you. And Hillian is opposed. I'm opposed. Moran? And Brown is away. So the motion is defeated. Moved by Jolicoeur, seconded by Grieve. All those in favor? Any opposed? Opposed by Arbor. Motion's carried. Thanks for bearing with me there, everyone. Okay. On to our biggest service under the Rec Commission, Service 645, which is the recreation complexes. I'll turn it over to staff yet again.
Thanks. And I see Jennifer Zabinden's name is on the agenda, and I believe Jennifer's online as well. But Trish, are you introducing the PowerPoint?
I am.
You are, okay, and Jennifer will be supporting the discussion.
Yeah.
Trish, over to you.
All right, 645 Community Recreation Complexes Service. So this includes the sub-functions of 646, the administration, aquatics, operations, arena, wellness programs. There are no changes to the service proposed this year, and the participants are Courtney, Comox, Cumberland, a defined portion of Area A being Sound, and electoral areas B and C. So in 2025, some of the accomplishments for this year were the slide refurbishment at the Aquatic Center. We did some mechanical upgrades, a partial roof replacement, and a new wellness center room. So if you've been there, you've noticed that the wave room has been swapped with the fitness room to make it a little bit bigger. We have ordered some new fitness equipment. Some of that has arrived and is already in place and being used. And we're still waiting on some because there is a backlog in ordering. And we've got a draft violent incident safety plan that we are working through with our staff. And this year we are looking forward to doing training on that and then also sharing it out with our municipal partners. One thing not noted in the slide, of course, we celebrated our 50 years of sport at the Sports Center, but we also welcomed over 10,000 children and youth during school hours through school district sponsored field trips. So we're starting to see after COVID, the numbers coming back to where they were previous to that, where the schools are using the facilities a lot more during the days than they have been in the past, which is really great to see. As Doug talked about, trends, challenges, we've got aging facilities. They're at key milestones with their asset replacement, but we also have got, great continuing partnerships with Comox Valley Schools and North Island College. In terms of the recreation strategic plan, we've got good progress moving forward on that. As a reminder, the architectural feasibility study and business case for Arena 3 are now complete, and we're starting engagement with Comox Valley Schools on those. Decarbonization of the sports center and aquatic center is moving forward with the upgrades and replacement of natural gas equipment at the aquatic center in 2026 and further upgrades in 27 and 28 in the sports center. In 2026, we'll also be starting a feasibility study to examine options for pool expansion, either at the aquatic center or the sports center. I know through the recreation strategic plan, initially it was thought that we were looking at just expanding the aquatic center. However, the building shell itself at the sports center is in very good condition. And we feel it might be best just to do the feasibility study on the two options to see what they are. So we have a full picture of what those costs and opportunities are. We're also somewhat limited by the space that we can utilize at the college because they are going through their own planning process about looking at the future of the college facilities and how much land that they need, and they are limited there. So what we want to do this year is look at all the options, bring that back to the commission so you have a full picture of what the options are. We also want to make sure that as we move forward with Arena 3, that if a renovation to the sports center pool does end up going ahead, we want to make sure that it is considered in conjunction with the addition of the arena. The last thing we want to do is build an arena and then find out we needed 12 more feet for the renovation of the pool to whatever it ends up being. So we just want to make sure that all the plans align regardless of the timeline for all of those things. This will also be important for the commission as you consider the aquatic side of the strategic plan as a whole, both indoor and outdoor facilities. Now, the outdoor pool is not included in the recreation strategic plan, but we know that, that is starting to come forward and there'll be some further discussion with that. So again, we'd like to bring forward all the options and then the commission has all information needed to make a decision on whether or not to support the outdoor pool or to what extent to support it, along with looking at our indoor facilities. And then we've talked about field amenities quite a bit, so I'll just move forward from that one. Our work plan items for this year, with the decarbonization strategy, our capital work again is going to be focusing on the aquatic center. We are looking at a 2-month closure. It's actually about 10 weeks and 2 days. The replacement of the air handling unit is a very big project and it takes about 8 weeks for demo and construction. So, and that is the piece of equipment that we've been having the most challenges with and the piece of equipment that has been causing some of the emergency shutdowns. So we're looking to get the equipment at the end of June on site, and then right after school finishes, closing the aquatic center and then having it closed until Labor Day. But we will be shifting a lot of programming and things over to the sports center pool and utilizing and maximizing that use quite a bit more this year. Unfortunately, because of the scope of this project, it requires a very long shutdown. We'll also be doing some other work while we've got it closed, the roof and skylight replacement and some other things as well that are not as big or as long timeline, but again, unfortunately, that their handling unit has to be our priority because it has been the thing that has been it's lasted a long time, but it's causing us some issues now, as we talked about. So on staff training, we're going to be working towards doing training on the violent incident safety plan and some other in-service training this year, making sure that staff have the tools and the knowledge they need to keep themselves and the public safe, understanding when to call the RCMP, when to run, hide, fight, those sorts of things. Just a reflection of like some of the things that we have to work with within our facilities. We will be putting in applications to the Clean BC Fund as well, and maybe looking ahead to the Green Municipal Fund. The Clean BC Fund is the one that is administered by Fortis, which if we're successful, we may be able to see up to $1 million for the Aquatic Center project, but we still won't know about that for a little bit. We just found out, however, unfortunately, our 2 applications for the Green Municipal Fund that were submitted about 18 months ago, we just found out last week that we weren't successful in those, but we're still waiting to find out about the Strategic Priorities Fund. And the last time I connected with them, they were looking at June, possibly is when we would find out about that one. And that's for $5 million. On the human resource side, you'll notice there's possibly a position anticipated for 2027, along with some asset management as well. This will, as Lucy mentioned, this will change as we go forward because there's not a 1.0 FTE allocation for recreation for asset management. It'll be 0.3. So that will come back in the recommended budget, at least the cost for that. On the expenses, we're seeing an increase of about $1.5 million over 2025. The largest increases are in personnel costs, and this year is a bargaining year as well. Transfers to reserves because our reserves are quite low for this, the size of the service and the facilities that we have. And as we're decarbonizing our facilities, our utility costs related to electricity are going up and those rates are going up as well. It's a consequence of getting off natural gas, and there is the benefit of reducing our greenhouse gas emission, but it does cost us a little bit more as well, so. On the revenue side, we are seeing an increase in taxation there. And there is also a one-time transfer from reserve as well to try to reduce that taxation increase in this year. But it is an increase of $875,000 there. Sales of service, we're hoping will go up slightly by 110,000 to help offset that. And we are doing a fees and charges review this year as well. So we may see that change in the future as we look at how much revenue we can generate from sale of services and fees and charges. On this slide, I don't know, it's maybe a little bit hard to see there. For 2026, the proposed tax rate is 27.29 cents per thousand, and that is an increase from 2025 at 24.91. So there is an increase there as well. Again, you related to personnel costs, utilities, that sort of thing, and also some for capital projects. In 2026, we're anticipating a 4.6% increase in the fees that we're collecting, or approximately 2.5 million as a whole. Again, with the aquatic center shutting down in the summer, fees for swimming are anticipated to decrease by 8.7%, but we are going to be looking to maximize the use of the sports center pool throughout the summer as best we can to minimize that, and also really to address the need from the community to have indoor swimming available over the summer and as many programs available as we can. Looking ahead for 2027 to 2030, we anticipate increasing budgets, largely driven again by personnel costs aligned with the collective agreement, debt charges due on the capital lifecycle replacement, and so forth. Again, we may see some increases in sales of service as we go through that fees and charges review. On the asset management side, we completed condition assessments on the curling center this year, and we continued with the replacement of the end-of-life equipment that aligned with the decarbonization strategy. We are looking forward to establishing a new program for asset management that includes the ability to utilize the data that we have for decision-making, risk assessment, that sort of thing. Staff has been doing, as I talked about a few meetings ago, a really great job with what they have, but are eager to have better information to be able to make better decisions and recommendations to the commission. Again, asset management, these are the costs that we're looking at going forward. These may change slightly going into the recommended budget, but they have to do with preparing ourselves so we can get onto our computerized asset management system, also defining our processes, cleaning up and collecting data, a lot of information that we need in order to have a robust system that's really going to help us in decision making as we go forward and maintaining our equipment to the best of our ability. On the capital side, 2026 to 2030, the capital works are aligned with the capital plan that was brought forward just over a year ago. However, as we're working with the engineering team on the decarbonization projects, some of those are coming in higher or lower than originally anticipated. In the case of 2026, our primary focus is on the aquatic center and replacing the air handling unit and installing an air source heat pump. We'll see huge reductions in our greenhouse gas emissions by doing those two projects, and also increase in the health and safety for our staff and minimizing our shutdowns going forward. The cost of the air handling unit is higher than what we originally anticipated due to the size of the mechanical room, some market conditions. It has to be custom manufactured, and we do need additional venting and air circulation because that has been one of the issues that has been causing shutdowns lately. because we're not getting the right kind of circulation for the health and safety of the customers and our staff. In 2027, we're looking forward to focusing more attention on the sports center with expanding the heat reclaim system, installing hydronic heating and replacing the natural gas boilers. And this will require also a small addition to the building to house some of that equipment. Then in 2028, we'll be looking to replace the slab for Arena One. That slab has met its end of life. If anyone here is a hockey player, they will know that one end of the ice is much thicker than the other. And it takes a lot of work to level that out. And it's just getting to a critical point. And then we're looking to potentially do some other renovations, possibly to the mezzanine, the change rooms, depending on where we're at with the addition of the arena and whether or not the pool will be renovated or as a pool or move forward in the future as some other space. So those things may get pushed out a little bit, but it'll depend on where we're at with our planning. Looking at this slide, this one just has Arena 3 in it, layered in based on the costs that we currently have. We will be looking to refine those costs this year, and this is again for a community rink starting in 2027. Also some work to the curling center as well, which would be the replacement of the roof and some siding, which we're responsible for as that exterior shell. Looking ahead to 2021 to 2020 or 2035, focus again will be to continue to work on our decarbonization and looking to refine the estimates for life cycle replacement, because when we get a little bit further out, they're a little bit bigger than probably or broader than what we anticipate, and we need to further refine those as we get a little bit closer. And again, that our asset management planning will help with that. Here in this one, you can see that we've layered in a possible pool addition, or it might be a renovation to 2031 to 2034. And this is a very high level estimate based on the aquatic strategy. As we work through the feasibility studies this year with the options, we'll have much better information that could be included in the long-term capital plan for that project. And then here we are onto reserves, and we're going to be talking about reserves and debt funding. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Kelly now, who's going to take over the presentation.
Thank you, Trish. So the reserves, these are our projected ending balances for as of December 31st, 2025. We are still in our year-end process, so they are, as I said, just projections right now. They will change for the recommended. So the reserves overall for this service are low, especially when we look at the high value of the assets in the service. It's a challenging time. We have a lot of major equipment that needs to be replaced and look at the increasing capacity to meet the demand that's happening. The future expenditure reserve, this is an operational reserve, and this can be used for really anything that comes up. It can be used for rate stabilization, for a capital project funding, for any type of emergency that comes up. So the GFOA best practices recommend that we have on average 3 to 4 months of operating expenses available, which for this service would put us right around the $2.7 to $3 million mark. As you can see, we don't get there at any point. So we still have a lot of work to do with the future expenditure reserve. The capital works and machinery reserve. So this is a capital reserve that can only be used for capital projects. Again, this reserve is quite low, especially when we consider the capital plan and the life cycling needs that we have. The contributions may look to be somewhat adequate, but we need to remember that we are planning to pay for the current life cycling through debt, and also we need to be saving for the future life cycling as well. So we're going to be doing both of those concurrently. So we really need to focus on building up our reserves over the next 10 to 20 years. This one is just the last 5 years of it.
So this is our debt servicing. So the slide here just shows our total debt servicing against our operating expenses. So we currently have some current debt, but it's pretty minor at 1.7% of our total operating costs. But as we start to get into the capital projects, that builds all the way up to 24.8% in 2030. Oh, too far. So this is how we have some of the current capital planned in the proposed plan. We have decarbonization projects that are currently funded 100% by debt. Sorry, I shouldn't say 100% by debt. They are mostly funded by debt because we don't have the reserves available to do them. And of course, the Arena 3 is fully funded through debt. As we go through the next year, the Arena 3 costs will become more refined and there will be various decision points for the board to make their decisions around the arena. But for the decarbonization projects, at this point, they have to occur. The recreation team has spent a lot of time planning and looking at all of the assets. And over the last year, especially, they have really looked at which ones need to occur and which ones can be deferred. So this is where we're at. We have just over $9.8 million that we need to do in asset life cycling that we don't have a funding for reserves that we have to do. So this leaves us with the alternative of debt funding. So right now, this is just the options that we're presenting. In the proposed financial plan, we have the first column there that you can see. We've layered it over 15 years. It's long-term debt. And we have an annual operating debt service cost of $947,000 per year, just about 948. And that equates to an average household of 865,000. It's going to cost them $26.82 for this debt. Over the entire course of the loan, it's going to cost an average of $402.23. And the total cost of the debt is $14,216,000. Sorry, 216,000. There are a couple of other alternatives that we looked at. One of them is a 10-year loan. Again, it's long-term and it brings your estimated cost annually up to about $34.86. So just about $8 per household. Over the entire course of the loan, it's $348.60. And your total cost of the borrowing is $12,280,000. The short-term debt is an option that we have where we won't have to go out for public approval for it. That can be done through a board decision. The total annual operating cost for this is $2.2 million. So that's how much we would need to add to the current requisition to fund this option. The tax rate the annual cost per household would increase to about $64.01. And over the course of the 5-year loan, it would be an average of $320.05. The total cost of debt for this option is $12,785,000. But of course, it does have the impact or the benefit of it's over in 5 years versus the 15 or the 10-year option. So it's really a balance of what is really affordable versus what is sort of affordable, if you want to put it that way, over the 5-year. And then, of course, just as we're ending that debt, we're getting into the debt for the new pool project. And there's some various other smaller projects that are happening throughout the later years. So the capital projects, the new projects there in 2035, the $2 million, those are still being defined, but that's a benchmark of what we are thinking we're going to need within that 10-year cycle. That again is probably going to be debt funded. So I'll stop here if you have any questions about the reserves or the debt. cost.
Well, thanks for that pause. I think it is a good time to switch to some questions. I'll hand it to Director Kerr.
One of my favorite topics. All right. So I like this debate. Paid off quickly, paid off in a longer period. The one thing I want to just say is that this is like a lot about this is asset renewal. These are, renewing assets that we haven't been collecting reserve funds over the past 10, 15, 20 years. And so the users that have been using these facilities, many of them living here during that time period, haven't been taxed enough to have reserve funds to now do the asset renewal that's needed. So to me, the long-term option of kicking it down the line and having future generations paying for stuff that should have been renewed and reserve funds collected previously doesn't make sense. Also, when you look at the 2031 increased debt obligations, we want to pay this debt off as soon as possible so that we can actually then get into those other debt projects from new projects that are coming online. Finally, if you look at the household, yes, and it's more tax per year per household over those 5 years, but you're saving $80 per household over the lifespan of the loan. So for all of those reasons, I'm very, very much in favor of the short-term debt option. And that's not even talking about having to go out to the public and ask if we can do it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those comments. I had the same thought. The cost of borrowing is about 30% less between the 5 and the 10 year, and of course it goes up from there. So, and this obligation to borrow it represents what should have been put away. So the longer we avoid the true cost of maintaining our assets, the further we dig ourselves in, because there's always future obligations. And if we spread that debt out over longer, it just compounds the problem over time. So I'm in agreement as well. Alternate Director Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I agree with the previous statements as well around the debt. But it was a quite lengthy presentation. I'm going to go back to the budget for the operations for the service. And firstly, I think one of the things I'm happy to hear about the project plan for the aquatic center this year. And so I just want to confirm, did I hear that the planned 10-week shutdown will be July through to Labor Day? Is that correct?
Through the chair to alternate Director Jolicoeur, yes, it'll be right after school. We're still looking at what the day is, like the last day. It'll be open, and then it'll go right through to Labor Day, and then the day after Labor Day, it would be back open.
Yeah, and I'm assuming the timing of that was to have minimal impact on swimming programming. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I thought. That's good rationale. I guess my curiosity is just given the climate crisis that we're in and the likelihood of heat domes, I'm wondering if we've analyzed the impact of having that facility closed, both for emergency activation for cooling centers, but also for people to get out of the heat and get into some cold water. And, I'm not sure what the numbers are relative to how many people we can fit in at the aquatic center versus the sports center, but that's kind of where my mind went. And if we've given any thought around the impact on emergency activations for cooling centers, et cetera.
Certainly, through the chair. We actually don't use the aquatic center at this time for that, but we do use the sports center for that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
And it is a bigger space and has more capacity for that.
Thanks. I'll get
Thanks
back
for
in line.
that. And Director Arbor. Oops. There we go.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's so many elements. I forget sometimes myself stuff, how much, I've been proud of the work of the commission, because the decarb work, there's a lot of good things that have happened where I diverge is really on future kind of planning. But I also agree with the short-term debt, especially considering what might lie ahead for this commission. So the only other thought I would have is we're putting a lot of expenditures out on planning and for some of those future pieces. And going back to my initial comments, I'm wondering if the board would be amenable considering the Arena 3 will be the first big item in this financial plan. If we could ask staff to come back with options before finalization of this budget to complete a usage study of the arena. I have a hard time imagining us going to the population with a $50 million proposal and not have some of the basic numbers as we saw with the memorial pool, to get some understanding of where people are at with it. And that usage could actually either really provide some clarity around the equity, maybe I'm totally off, or maybe it would actually get the commission to actually reckon with what we might need to do overall, right? So I'll propose that amendment later, but I just thought I'd show support. I'm not surprised that Dr. Kerr, that's his favorite option because he hates that, generally speaking. And yeah, I actually agreed with that point. Thanks.
Thanks for that, and I'll put it back to alternate director Shelley.
No, thanks. Yeah, I support that. I think, for a decision like that, having all the data on the table, and I'm trying to think back at the ice rink study that we did. I don't think the demographic data, we had that granular level. So I would support that. But my next question on operations was one of the largest increases, and it's actually on this slide, and I didn't hear any comment in your presentation on this, but the $230,000 increase to support services. What are support services? What is that increase?
Through the chair, maybe I can hand that off to Kelly. She could probably explain that better than I can.
Support services is the general administration overhead that gets allocated between all of the services. So it's allocated according to a board policy. There's several different allocation bases that we use. There's IT, HR, building space, prior year operating budget, and then a 5-year rolling capital average. And so all of those general admin costs are pooled and then they're allocated according to the policy to each of the services.
Okay, that's helpful. Chair, if I don't see another
Go
light. The other question, and I'm just trying to find it here where it was, but one of the increases was 70,000 for, yes, here it is, under contract and general services for a one-time referendum. And so I'm just wondering if staff can speak to that as well.
Through the chair to the director, we had been hoping that perhaps we could get towards a referendum, and that was for the arena. So it is layered into the budget. If it's not, I think the chances are low. So it may be something that the commission may want to remove, or leave it in there, and then if it's not used, it'll just go for it as surplus in the next year. And I don't know, maybe James can talk to that a little bit more. I'm not sure. Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, Trish, you're right. There was initial considerations around potentially a referendum on Arena 3. We're simply not there yet. We need to secure a whole lot more information before we get to that point and consider going to a referendum on that topic. And so, yeah, I think in terms of the budget itself, if the commission wanted to remove that 70,000 reference, it was actually removed, I think, from the PowerPoints and not from the detail slide that's on the documents that are online. So so I'd actually want to check with finance whether that is something that has to be physically removed, or it at this stage of referendum in the fall, which is what had been possibly contemplated, it's simply not in the cards.
And Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. Slightly different tack in relation to capital projects. Those of us at the economic forecast breakfast this morning heard from the representative of 19 Wing Comox that they have 5 major capital projects worth $1.5 billion planned over the next 10 years with 600 new positions. And I'm just wondering if we know if any of those major projects are in fact recreation projects, or if we have any opportunities to partner with them in that regard, given the increase in personnel that are coming, and if they're not building new recreation projects, the fact that they'll be using our facilities. Thanks.
Like, yeah, maybe Doug Tomarzo has some insight on that, and certainly the conversations are active between the local governments and CFB Comox. But yeah, Doug, did you want to?
Yeah, you're correct in the population numbers and the major projects. To date, we have had some conversations, and in the past, we've had approached them on a number of partnerships. Some of the money will potentially be put to some field improvements or outdoor type space use. But conversations to date haven't indicated any major facility as arena or indoor space to be upgraded or provided. Um, that's one of the cautionary comments I put in was as they continue to have to serve their membership, we do use their facilities currently, and we would suspect to see them draw away from the public access potentially to their facilities if they don't build anything new recreational wise, which to date we're not aware of them doing any major facility improvement. So it's another pressure.
Thanks for that. Director Arbor.
Yeah, really good observation by Dr. Allen, and I think we've raised in the past if there would be opportunities to collaborate with them. Welcome back, Dr. Jolicoeur. That was a good catch on the referendum, and I definitely missed it. I would prefer actually if we had some finality on that today, that line item actually gets removed, and that it's not an item we've discussed at this table that I know of, the consideration of referendum in this term. We are terming out. And if we do pursue it, wow, that's going to change my election completely strategy, actually. But I think it's quite consequential. And I think with my motion that we still, as the chair said, I think we still, and the CEO, we still have some more work to do. And now that it's on the public record that we're putting that in the budget, yeah, I'm not super comfortable with that.
And if I could just clarify, Director Arbor, I heard you mention a usage study earlier, and is that interest in having a usage study as part of our 26 to 2030 financial plan to undertake right away so we can start to get some of that data, not to be done prior to this budget being adopted? Okay, that's what I thought I heard, but
That's what I thought you said too.
yeah, and thank you. You shared with me some potential wording there, so that can be something that we can consider. I'm not sure what the costs might be for such a usage study, but certainly
We can look into it.
we can look into it, and I know that we are collecting some data, so something that can be addressed.
Yeah, that seems like useful information for such a impactful decision. So is there any specific direction that we need to provide on the referendum, or is the discussion adequate for what needs to come back at the next meeting?
Through the chair, what I wanted to say is just confirming that was supposed to come out, and it was just it's an error. So if it's okay with the committee, we typically will have a few errors that occur that will bring it back with recommended, if that's okay. So if you rest assured that it will come out, we'll just fix it for the final. Okay.
Okay, great. That's definitely the easiest way to do it. Thank you. And I don't see any other lights on, and we do have one more budget left on the agenda here. So maybe we could proceed with the recommendation if someone wants to move it.
And sorry, on the last slide on the PowerPoint, I don't think Trish quite got there yet, but there are two options. So Lisa, if you don't mind bringing that back up.
Great. We did get some options, didn't we? Okay.
So I think, is there any further explanation needed on option 2? It does mention there that taxation will be increased to fund short-term costs across the plan, and we would bring that into the recommended as well. So that impact what you would see in the recommended financial plan, should you go with option 2.
And option 2 is more the reflection of what the comments were around the preference towards short-term borrowing. Just to be clear. So I'll leave it to the commission to make the motion. And Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. At the discretion of the chair and the commission, I sent James and further that staff comes back with options and associated budget to conduct the user study per service participant of the arena as part of the financial plan. It could be an entirely separate motion, so I thought I'd raise it now in case I missed the vote.
Okay, let's do it as two separate motions then, just to keep it clean. Okay, so I'll call the question on the motion. That's option 2 on the screen. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? No one's opposed, and the motion's carried. And go ahead, Director Arbor, you can just read your motion out.
Thanks, I slipped. I meant to actually oppose that, but that's okay. And further, that staff comes back with options and associated budget to conduct a usage study per service participant of the arena as part of the 2026-2027 financial plan.
Second.
And would anyone like to speak to the motion on the floor? Oh, okay, we'll give staff a minute then. I think James got it in text for you. Yep. Okay. Okay, we have it up on the screen that staff comes back with options and associated budget to conduct a usage study per service participant of the arena as part of the 2026-2027 financial plan.
Yeah, does just mentioning to me, this is a fairly straightforward exercise, and in terms of options, it's cost wise, it's not an extensive amount of work. So we could come back at recommended budget just to explain how this gets layered into the financial plan. If that's, I'm also looking at finance and working on the fly here. So rather than come back with a full staff report at commission between now and recommended budget, we could come back and layer this into the recommended budget. Because it isn't a substantive amount of money, Doug's letting me know that.
So that staff include a usage study per, like, just skip the middle part with options and associated budget, and that staff include a usage study per service.
As in the recommended financial plan,
Is
yeah,
that-
we would
that's what you're
specifically report on that or describe that when the recommended budget comes back.
Would that work for you, Director Arbor, or would you like to leave it or do something different there?
No, sorry, I'm just processing. That's fine, I think, for the commission, but I just want to put note that I wouldn't think it'd be that simpler and that there would be different levels of usage study, right? But I just want to leave that comment out there. I'm hoping that we'll get some really good breakdowns, and maybe it's cheap, but from what I saw in the Cowichan Valley, it's actually cost them quite a bit. So, but I'm comfortable with the suggestion to just layer it in and get staff to come back eventually.
Yeah, perhaps as a starting point, and if a more detailed analysis is wanted, we could explore that when it comes back. Okay.
And Lucy, did you want to?
Maybe just saying out loud what's in my mind, just to make sure that that we're clear. Potentially for today, we're working towards a recommended budget that staff likely can estimate what such a study would cost. And I'm not, we're a little bit back and forth on talking with each other, but just potentially Trish or Doug may have a dollar figure in mind, and we can add that to the recommended to your proposed budget and part and parcel of your resolution around that. And secondly, just my wondering, is this pretty specifically related to the arena project coming forward, in essence, which we have quite a substantial capital project that's around that, operating dollars that are rolled in that, and it being potentially that may be a place where this study can be addressed. And that information coming to you along with a whole lot of other information that's set to come to you from the arena perspective. So just putting that out there. I'm not sure if that makes any sense to Trish or Doug. Just another way to tackle it.
I see nodding heads and no real concerns here, so, and no further lights on, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And anyone opposed? We have Nickel and Grant opposed. Okay, thanks, everyone. We've got one more item left here. Service 660 Comox Valley Exhibition Grounds, and I believe this is Jennifer presenting.
Jennifer, Trish?
Or Trish?
It's just.
Your
Trish.
your mic is still on.
Thanks, Trish.
Thank you.
Oh,
Get the clicker.
all right. So last but definitely not least, the Comox Valley Exhibition Grounds and Service 660. So the purpose of the service is to provide for the operation and maintenance of the Comox Valley Exhibition Grounds. The participants are Courtney Comox Cumberland and all of the electoral areas. In 2025, some of the accomplishments we saw is the addition or upgrading of the Stonehenge footings. So that is the material that is in the riding ring. Condition assessments were completed on the exhibition grounds, buildings, their bleachers, and the riding rings. And there was a lot of maintenance that was done to support the user groups, including Comox First Nation, have their national indigenous people stay there. The exhibition was there this year, the farmers market, almost every Saturday from April until October. And numerous equine events, gymkhanas, horse shows, Western games, as well as a lot of stock dog events as well. I have to say that the exhibition grounds are used every single day, and it is a great thing to see that it is very well used for both organized and spontaneous activities. It's a very, very busy place. And it's hard to get a weekend in there if you're trying to book too. Some of the trends, challenges, and opportunities is the increased usage of the exhibition grounds and its programs. Challenges, Doug noted this in his opening statements, increasing complex requirements to gain ALR approval for non-farm use designation and increasing costs for capital projects. Some opportunities, future upgrades to the facilities may lead to opportunities for more use, revenue, and partnerships. In terms of the strategic priorities, as mentioned on the previous slide, we did facility inventory and condition assessments in 2025. And that's going to give us some really good data as we start to develop out our asset management for the facility. Conceptual site plan that was done in 2021 is still with the ALC. We're having ongoing dialogue with them on it. However, there is a briefing note that was included in your package that talked about the projects that we're seeing moving forward or that we can foresee moving forward. Some things we still need to consider and some things that have changed significantly, which may have taken some of those projects off the plate. They're more related to the movement around the grounds and to the grounds, that sort of thing, like the spine road. 2026, our primary focus is going to be working with the Comox Valley Farmers Market on the plan for the pavilion and improving market field. So those projects going hand in hand. We've already had some preliminary conversations with them. And in talking to Twyla, she believes that probably the best place for the pavilion is in the middle of Farmers Market Field. So with that, if we get ALC approval, City of Courtney approves of it, they bring forward their plan, we'll flesh that out more with the commission. But our plan to upgrade the field will go hand in hand with that pavilion because we don't want to do unnecessary work to the ground itself until the pavilion is there. So we make sure that the whole thing goes together. Human resources remains the same for this year. Going into next year might be an additional allocation of the branch assistant. On the expense side, we're seeing expenses down by 13% from 2025. We do work on a fairly lean budget for the facilities, and we don't have any major capital planned other than Market Field, looking towards 2027 for that, along with the pavilion in there. On the revenue side, in 2026, we're seeing taxation hold steady at 586,000, as well as rental revenue at 146. We are going to be looking at fees and charges in 2026, just like we are for the recreation facilities. So the bylaw for fees and charges was extended for another 2 years to give us some time to look at what those fees and charges are. Here we can see that the tax rate is anticipated to go down just slightly from 1.84 cents to 1.81 cents. As we look to 2027 to 2030, we can see the budget is relatively stable at around 750,000 per year. And then on the capital planning side, this slide just shows that at this time, the grounds are in very good condition and their buildings and the bleachers and everything else is in very good condition. However, if we're not investing in those facilities, we could see them critically decline by 2040. So as we're working towards developing our asset management plans, we want to keep a keen eye on that because we want to maintain that good condition that we already have there. For the users. So at this time, we don't have a built out capital plan, a long-term capital plan for the exhibition grounds, and that will be a goal in the coming years to do so. Because we definitely don't want to lose sight of the condition of the facilities. We want to keep them in good condition. So to advance asset management, these are the fees that will be included in the budget for 2026 and moving forward. And it's mostly some of the shared costs of asset management, a portion of software implementation when we get to 2027. In terms of our capital plan, again, Market Field is our primary focus. There's money that's been moved forward into 2027 for that. We've been carrying it forward for a few years. We don't anticipate we'll be able to get to it this year because it does take so long to get through the ALC and also all the other permitting that may be required for to work through the pavilion and the Market Field together. But in 2026, we are going to be working on the footings in therapeutic riding and some other little minor projects. We're also looking to replace one of our trucks that's used at the ground with a new electric truck because it's aging out now. In the long term, we do have one project in 2031 at this point, and that is washrooms for the Solom River trailhead. On the reserves, I think we're doing fairly good given the size of the surface on this side. So we've got 1.2 million as an ending balance for 2025. And then looking ahead for our future expenditure reserves, it's looking at staying relatively stable around 450,000 to 460 over the next few years. Our capital works and machinery reserves, 2026, we're looking at 845, so a little bit of money will be taken out of there this year, and then going back up to about 1.1 million by 2030. Skip over to that one. So the recommendation from staff is that the proposed 2026 to 2030 financial plan for Service 660 for the Comox Valley Exhibition Grounds be approved. Are there any questions? I see Director Grieve was many notes.
Thanks for the presentation, and I'll give Director Grieve the mic.
Boy, now you're gonna get it. You know, when you think about it, $860,000 for a facility like this, when we're gobstruck with some of the other budgets up there, it always goes to show that sports trumps everything. And once again, I think this is misplaced in the rec commission. I think it would be better standalone. But, you know, as far as the ALC, a couple of questions there. I mean, it's funny when you take a look at other jurisdictions and what the ALC is allowed to go ahead. So is this a new board of keeners or something that have come on board at the ALC? That because I know that it's very difficult for people to even put on events there, like Bug Jam or something, because it's not agricultural. So you know, I'm sure they're meaning well, but do we have any idea where they really are with regards to say the pavilion pole structure for the farmers market?
Through the chair to Director Grieve. So Twyla and Jennifer and I have had discussions already around what the farmers market is looking for. They've reached out to the ALC. What the ALC just came back with yesterday is that we should submit an application for a non-farm use permit for that project specifically. So what we had applied for in 2022 was that they approved the whole conceptual design plan. Now they've come back and said, why don't you specifically apply for the farmers market field and the pavilion? And of course, the farmers market's still working through what that size might be, what the dimensions, things like that. They've already reached out to the city of Courtenay to get some information on, you know, how it applies to zoning and building bylaws and things like that. So it is moving ahead. It's just going to take a little while to still get there. Now, with respect to all of the other projects that were in the conceptual design plan, we do need to have a little more dialogue with ALC on those items, but the focus is primarily farmers market and the farmers market pavilion.
And yet it blows my mind to think that the farmers market is a non-farm use.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so integral into survival of farming, you know, it just. Anyway.
absolutely.
So I know we do have friends at the ALC. We know people. Okay, that's really good to know. And we do have 1.2 million in reserves. So would that be something that maybe the farmers market could tap into? I guess it would be a political decision, obviously.
Through the chair, I'll put that to Lucy or Kelly. That's that one.
The $1.1 million is in the capital works reserve, so it would have to be a capital project for the exhibition grounds itself.
Which would be a pavilion,
Pardon me?
which the pavilion would be.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
it just
Perfect.
wouldn't be specifically for the farmers market.
And I heard you mention washrooms. Are we talking, you know, because we are hooked up to the Comox Valley sewer system here. But, you know, we have a couple of overflowing porta potties scattered around the facility there. So you said it was at the trailhead, is it? So is this an actual flush toilet? Because it would be below the floodplain there, wouldn't it?
Well, and that's through the chair to Director Grieve. That is one of the challenges that we have to work through and determine what that might look like. Again, this was in the conceptual design plan. And I think I would have to look back at the briefing note, but I think that's one of the projects where we've identified ones that we know that we could probably move ahead, ones that we need to look at more, and other ones that at this point just don't make any sense anymore, like changing the traffic access into the grounds, because there's been a lot of traffic changes on headquarters in Dove Creek Place already. So it's pushed out for a while because we need to look at it more. And maybe it moves as part of the thing too. So.
Okay, because that, I think, you know, we have a situation where we do have washrooms on the site and they're kept locked. I know when I was with Music Fest, the porta potty bill was astronomical. And even another event that I'm associated with, I can't talk about, $8,000 for 3 days for porta potties. That's a big chunk of cash when we got the sewer right there. So what would it take to prioritize washrooms, even if they're not in the floodplain, but, you know, upgrade what we got maybe on the riding ring side or the Greystone Manor side or something like that, you know, I think. I did talk to Doug briefly about this, but, so it is something that is on the original strat plan, right? Conceptual strat plan, but down at the trailhead, you said, so. yeah, that-
Director Grieve, I'm gonna have to cut in because we only have 10 minutes. There's other mics on and I understand.
No, I
that-
understand. I
that-
just wanted to I wanted to talk to the source just for a sec. So, yeah, just a few concerns. Obviously, $860,000 is an absolute steal for what this grounds actually offers the Comox Valley. Thank you.
Thanks for that, and sorry to cut you off. I know you have some good questions, but we're out of time. Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. For this budget, I mean, we have aging assets for sure, right? So I'm just want to make sure that as we onboard an asset management person, they will look at those facilities as well. Is that the plan? Okay, great. Because as Chair McCollum said earlier around the long-term reserve build, it's probably inadequate in that particular service. And it, just like the community hall, I think it'll be good to get up to speed and start getting some reports around how to renew and prolong the longevity of those assets. And I do want to show, maybe we should refer that topic to the ESC table and the ag position, because what Director Grieve talked about around the ALC, like it is becoming a real problem. This morning, I had the manager of the festival on Hornby reached out to me in a panic, passed her on, but you know, the ALC is telling them they can't have an event that has more than 150 people, and they've been running the Hornby Festival for 40 years on land, and every night there's 1,300 people, and now they've already contracted. So the ALC, I think, has gone, and we saw it with the disc golf issue at the ESC table. Like the ALC has gone way beyond where they should be in terms of their permitting and expectation processes. And so I would like to see this issue come back, like to the ESC table and with our position to discuss, because I think we need to do some lobbying there. But I saw a yes on the asset management for this, that it will be built in. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, no, I mean, we are out of time, but I do wonder if there is value in bringing back a discussion on where like the impact of these complications that have come up in terms of our application. I know we did talk about it briefly a few meetings ago, but if that would be useful to you, Director Grieve, that we could get maybe a more detailed discussion of that plan and perhaps an update.
Yeah, I think, and I'm just reading the briefing note again here, and there's a lot of good information in there. I think that can be the foundation for a report to come back. Because it is a live topic. There's some decisions to be made going forward. So that briefing note, I think, is a really good starting point for a subsequent report.
Okay, great. And seeing no other lights on and I see no lights on, so I'm gonna call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, and thanks so much to staff, both finance and rec staff. It's been a long day in here for us, but I know today is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what goes into this process, so